Welcome everybody, Jack Acid here with ApexHead.com, bringing you episode 16 of the F1 2012 I Am No Expert Career Mode series, and today we are looking at an overcast day here at the Korea International Circuit, and team objective here was Sauber's to finish 12th. And taking a quick look just to confirm, we have no weather, or bad weather I should say, in store for the weekend, so safe to go with the dry setup. And as I mentioned in my last episode, you can take a look at the annotations posted here that link to my website that just go out and find more setup resources for this track. So feel free to check that out and cherry pick it to your liking until you find a setup that works for you. Not happy at all with my last race, finished 13th, although I was able to beat out Grosjean in a very intense 6 or 7 lap duel with the Lotus. Wasn't expecting to get ahead of him based on qualifying, but that's how it panned out. But bottom line, pace hasn't been that good in the Sauber. So taking this thing out for my first lap here in Q1, and as you can see, posting a P1 time, but of course that's because I'm the first car that finishes. And as you can see, having problems here on lap 2 and deciding that I'm just going to go ahead and go in and save the tires and let the times roll and see how the rest of the field's shaking out before I worry about setting a faster time. And as you can see, skipping ahead down to near the 6-minute mark and waiting until we get all the way down to the 5-minute mark, and going to go ahead and throw on a fresh set of tires. Might be able to use them up in Q2 if we can make it, but we definitely of course need to get in the top 17 cars here, right now running P18, so as long as we can get under that 17 mark here at the end of my second lap on the different tires, and you can see getting up into P14, going to be happy with that and hope that that's going to be good enough to get into Q2. Trying to be careful with my tires this time around. The last couple of races have really been hard on them. So my gamble paying off here, getting pushed down to 15th, but we are in Q2 and that's all that matters. And no real surprises at the bottom of the grid in terms of who was knocked out in Q1. Remember, a couple of races ago we had the benefit of our rival Roman Grosjean getting knocked out in Q1. But no such luck or advantage in this race. Going to have to earn it all on track. So here, end of lap 2, start of lap 3, able to shave off 1.6 seconds, which gets us from P14 to P11. So going to go ahead and bring it back into the garage and see what kind of pace I'm competing with. Would love to get it into the 142 range, but knowing how I typically do in qualifying, that's probably not likely to happen. Currently running P15 with just under 7 minutes to play. So going to go ahead and throw on this slightly used set of option tires, 88% to be exact. And hopefully that doesn't cost us. If we can get into the next session, we can use a fresh set. And Massa and I coming very close in the contact, coming at the end of turn 3 here. And just over 40 seconds to play, and that's going to cost me a little bit of time. And as you can see, that the session has expired, going wide here and deciding that enough is enough. Going to have to settle for P15. And the disappointing qualifying sessions continue to add up here with Sauber. And obviously very frustrating. But look at this, Roman Grosjean qualifying P17. Terrible session for him. He did set a time, so not sure what happened to him. So a stroke of luck comes back in our favor despite our problems. Of course, getting killed by Kamui Kobayashi. But in terms of rivals, way more focused on Grosjean than my teammate. Don't plan on staying with Sauber that long. Don't really care about being the #1 driver, to be honest with you. So hopefully Korea will be nicer to us than Suzuka in terms of making up some positions early. Was only able to gain a few spots at Suzuka. Need to make up more ground here. And as you can see, team objective, the same as qualifying, to finish in P12. Taking a quick look at the starting grid, Lewis Hamilton on pole position, Michael Schumacher with another good qualifying session in P5, passed from Maldonado and the Williams in P9 there. And Felipe Massa with Ferrari there in P16, right in the middle of myself and Grosjean. And so something happened to him in his session. And Charles Pic rounding out the bottom of the grid, playing the role of Mr. Irrelevant. So getting warmed up here in the garage, going to double check and make sure the forecast hasn't changed, and no, it has not. Let's take a quick look at our tire and fuel strategy. You can see that we're starting on the options due to pit in lap 6. This is a 14-lap race, and per usual, going to change my race fuel strategy to normal. And of course, making sure that we go out on a fresh set of options. Last year started on the primes quite a bit. For some reason, just haven't done that this year much. And most of that has to do with the fact that I've had pretty good success starting on the option tires. The Sauber's been pretty good on them. I haven't been necessarily, at least in qualifying. At least I haven't painted myself into a corner this weekend, and I'm at least able to start off on a fresh set, which hasn't been the case for the last couple of races, so that'll be a nice change of pace. Obviously, much nicer to start off on that fresh rubber, there's no doubt about that. But one of these days I'll get brave and start off on the primes and see how they do, because it's really something that I should take a look at. But first, the task at hand here on the starting grid, looking at the back of Nico Hulkenberg in the Force India, lined up next to a former teammate Daniel Ricciardo in the Toro Rosso, and here we go. And my key objective coming down into turn 1 is to not be overtaken by Roman Grosjean. Here comes Felipe Massa on the left-hand side, coming down to this early braking point, looking for some real estate on the inside. Contact from behind, not with my car, but contact all the same, coming around turn 2, and now wheel-to-wheel with Kamui, able to overtake him. There's Vern on the right-hand side, able to overtake him as well, looking at the back of Paul di Resta and Pastor Maldonado, coming down this very cluttered straight, coming into the very tricky braking section of turn 3, and braking a little bit too soon there. Now trying to make up some ground, the entire field slowing down, going wide here at turn 3. There was more contact there, it sort of knifed through, wheel-to-wheel with Weber coming back onto the tarmac, but not able to get ahead of him. And now Nico Rosberg in the Mercedes in close pursuit. Let's see if we can get around Weber, coming around here through turn 4. Yes, able to do so. Slight contact there with Fernando Alonso, and boy, not used to seeing this part of the field, that's for sure. Able to shoot in front of Schumacher, and holy smokes, we're up into P4, looking at the back of Jenson Button in the McLaren. Unbelievable. And so now trying to fend off Schumacher in the Mercedes as we come around turn 7, coming through turn 8, and mauling the curb there, getting that one all wrong, but not costing me, trying to keep Jensen in our sights. And now coming into turn 10, one of the most deceiving apexes on the circuit. Probably the most challenging corner for me. You can see that I went wide there, and Schumacher trying to take advantage of it. But this is obviously a much better start than I had at Japan. The real question is, will I be able to hold off this position? My guess is no, especially once we get into the pit stops. But right now, Schumacher looking for any way around that he can, and starting to lose the car coming out of turn 14, almost coming into the barrier, and here comes Schumacher, trying to regain our composure, trying to get around one of the final corners, now coming around turn 17 for the end of lap 1, and for now running P4, but you can see losing significant time on the podium leaders, and have to think that that's probably already a lost cause unless something happens up ahead. I know it's embarrassing to say that on lap 2, but that's just really how it works out. So skipping ahead here to lap 3, you can see still trying to fend off the Mercedes, coming down into turn 3, and Schumacher not quite having the pace. This is the first lap that we can use our DRS, so now definitely a risk with the AI, but as you can see, the gap's expanding out coming out of turn 3, and able to shave off a little bit of time from our previous lap. And trying to keep things steady coming around turn 4. So skipping ahead here to lap 4, and you can see that Mark Webber's overtaken Schumacher for P5 and able to trim off a little bit of time on our lap time. That's good. Turn 14 going a little bit wide here again, and getting things wrong at turn 15 now. One corner ahead of the last time, and trying to stay ahead of the Red Bull. Let's see if he can take advantage. Looks like he's not going to be able to, but the fact that he's sticking so close with me coming down the start-finish straight leads me to believe that he's going to have an opportunity coming down the long straight out of turn 2. We'll have to wait and see what happens. You can see losing 0.7 of a second from our previous lap, and so definitely having some wheel spin issues and some traction problems coming out of turn 14 and 15, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Checking on the pace of the Red Bull, let's see what happens. Here comes Mark Webber, trying to give him room on either side of the circuit, but it looks like he's not going to have time to get around, and he's not, as long as we don't go wide coming down here into the hard braking point at turn 3, and able to keep the car between the candy stripes. And now skipping further ahead, taking a bad angle here coming through turn 10 like I usually do, and Mark Webber trying to exploit, but able to get back on track before he's able to get around, and keeping an inside line position coming through turns 11 and 12. And you can see just what kind of pressure we're under from the Red Bull. You can see losing more time, being very, very careful with my tires. My tires are pretty well shot, very slippery at this point. Now coming through my favorite little sequence, at least thus far in the race. Kind of strange, don't normally have problems through there, but definitely had my fair share so far here. But it hasn't cost me a position yet. Still riding P4 here at the start of lap 6, and very anxious to pit. You can see my tire wear is pretty significant. And a question now if we're going to be able to stay ahead of the Red Bull for the length of one full lap to go before we go into pit. So let's see what happens coming down the straight. And you can see very good gap actually, or at least for me anyway, to the number of AI cars behind. You can see 4 or 5 cars. Mark Webber still in P5, but here comes Alonso, who's now overtaken Webber for the P5 spot. So now the Ferrari getting into the chase. And you can see coming out of here still maintaining a pretty good gap, but now going to have to worry about Alonso So now skipping ahead to the final sector of lap 6, and again, tires falling off pretty significantly. Now under tremendous pressure from the Ferrari, and we have to stay ahead of him. It makes me very nervous rolling up over the curb even just a little bit there. Taking kind of a bad angle coming around turn 15, but able to maintain okay. And this is a very tricky pit entry. Had a lot of problems in practice. You can see very squirrely coming out and almost rolling up onto the lawn. In fact, I do roll up onto the lawn just for a moment there. And so now time to find out just how much our pace is going to get butchered in terms of our pit stops. You can see very, very busy pit lane. And let's find out what the team can do for us here. Getting us out in just over 3 seconds, so that's pretty good. Dropping down into P9. And so that's going to be where we resume. So now skipping ahead to the end of lap 7, start of lap 8. Let's see what kind of ground we can make up in the pit stops. And you can see a number of cars in the pit lane. And coming out behind Weber, and that's a disappointment. That's really who I wanted to try and beat coming out. But you can see that Weber had the measure of me and was able to beat me out easily. And look at this, he's got a very good gap already. So right now running P5, but can't be too upset about that. P5 is a very good position, but let's see if we're able to keep that for the duration of the race. And trying to get aggressive to catch up with Weber at the end of turn 3 and going all the way off track doesn't cost me anything in terms of position, but obviously all kinds of time. So now skipping ahead to the start of lap 9, and now Kimi Räikkönen all over our gearbox, and he's going to have plenty of opportunity to overtake. Here he comes fast, using his DRS no less, and coming down on the left-hand side. There he goes. Schumacher trying to get involved. Let's see if we can outbrake Kimi down into turn 3. And again, went off track on the last lap, and feeling very nervous about that. Now wheel-to-wheel with the Lotus, and he backs off now. And so that was a very, very close call, but you can see just how much the field is bunching up. Here comes Räikkönen again on the right-hand side, but now backing off finally. And he was not done yet, and you can see he's got me a little bit spooked, rolling up over the curb there, but able to stay ahead of him. And I can see now that this is going to be a very, very long last sequence for the race because of just how much AI pressure I'm going to have. So now skipping ahead to the end of lap 9, Hamilton setting fastest lap, and still under all kinds of pressure from Kimi, and going to have to think that we're going to be dueling yet again. Coming down the long, straight into turn 3. And my best hope at this point is to let the Lotus go by and try and outbrake him yet again. That's going to have to be the theme for the rest of the race. Here comes Räikkönen, and just like on the last lap, there he goes. This time he's got better pace, and I'm going to have to figure out how to negotiate coming down to the braking point. Don't want to come into the back of him. Trying to drift in front of him, braking a little bit late, and trying to keep it on line, not going to happen, rolling off track, and now getting almost locked with Räikkönen, hoping to avoid a penalty, and here comes Schumacher on the left-hand side, who's outfoxed the both of us and stolen the position, now trying to beat out at least Kimi to get one position back, and trying to stick with Schumacher coming around here, making our turn a little bit late, not going to happen. Let's see if we can get an inside move here. Also not going to happen, almost coming into the contact of Schumacher, and just like that, the German has stolen P5 from both of us. But the good news is able to maintain decent pace with the Mercedes. And honestly, I'm just happy I avoided a penalty with Kimi coming back onto track. Our cars were definitely locked there. And so let's see if we can at least maintain P6. You can see there's a pretty good train of cars behind us. Going to go ahead and up our fuel mix and burn off some of that extra fuel. Now is the time. Absolutely want to keep up with Schumacher, but going to have to settle for P6 if that's what it comes down to. But first have to contend with the Lotus and any number of cars behind him. You can see Grosjean now running P13, and thankfully this time, pace not a problem coming down this straight, probably helped by the fuel mix change. And may have spoken too soon. Here comes Kimi on the left-hand side, and I want to go over on the left-hand side of the track to take this corner, but was afraid I'd drift into the Lotus, so wanting to avoid contact after all kinds of problems earlier on, feeling very, very sketchy about doing any kind of maneuver like that, but fortunately for me, able to keep Kimi in our rearview mirror for now. Just over 3 laps to go, and rolling up over the curb here and starting to lose the car, and there goes the Lotus, and here comes Alonso on the Ferrari, and we are wheel to wheel with Fernando, trying to stick with Kimi and going wide here, and that's going to let Alonso by, and we have a disaster unfolding before our very eyes as we try and fend off Nico Rosberg and the Mercedes, trying to chase Alonso down through turn 8, going a little bit wide here, able to get back online, and really hoping that we can stick with the Ferrari and try and get this position back. We've gone from 5th to 8th in a matter of no time, almost wheel-to-wheel with Alonso again. And time to test the mettle of Alonso coming around turn 11. Let's see if we can get around him on the inside through turn 12. Almost wheel-to-wheel again. Now turn 13. Contact with the Ferrari. and you can see our wheels almost interlocking. Alonso not giving up, coming around here, and you can see finally Alonso falls back as he was starting to drift off track just a little bit there, just as I start to do as we come around turn 15, and amazingly able to get in front of the Ferrari, no penalty incurred. It was pretty clean for the most part. As I start to get things wrong here and start to lose grip, coming down to the end of lap 11, and I've really got to stop and get my composure. Alonso driving very pissed off now, and you can see charging very, very hard, and have to think that he's going to try and make a move coming down the long straight, and why wouldn't he? He must think that that position was his and his alone. So here he is riding our tailpipe. Let's see what happens here. And for some reason, Alonso not making any kind of maneuver here. That's very strange. Remember, we are running the rich fuel mix, and have to think that maybe that's helping my pace coming down here into turn 3. And I'm feeling very, very shaken up by this sequence of events. The last couple of laps have been very intense, but you can see the gap starting to expand out. So now skipping ahead here to lap 12, and you can see getting that corner all wrong. My tires are getting very, very worn out here, and Alonso trying to take advantage. Definitely having problems with my braking points and feeling the pressure, drifting wide here again at turn 14. That's obviously the theme of the race. But my only objective at this point is just to stay ahead and keep P7 if I can. You can see there's a very long train of cars behind me. Coming around, we've got 2 laps to go to get this thing done. And of course my biggest concern is going to be the Ferrari coming down the long straight down into turn 3, which is where the AI seems to have very good pace. But remember, the last time we went through here, I should say a couple of laps ago, Fernando not able to make a move. But here he is again. And I'm staying on the driving line here, and here he goes on the left-hand side. Not a surprise. He's going to have the pace. He's able to get around us, but we should be able to outbrake him as long as we can avoid disaster. And able to drift back in front of him as long as we don't go wide, and able to keep it on track. And I don't know why the AI is so slow coming out of there, but there you have it. Able to maintain P7, so obviously feeling a lot of pressure now. And now skipping ahead to the final sector of the final lap, and you can see Alonso still behind us, riding very, very hard. And Lewis Hamilton able to take advantage of pole position and win the race, but that's not our concern right now. We just need to make sure we don't drift wide and avoid so many costly mistakes that I made in this race. It's really a miracle that I'm running P7, but I don't want to count on that until it's all said and done. So try to maintain an inside line coming through turns 11 and 12, and you can see Alonso looking for any advantage he can. And my tires, again, very, very worn out, and sticking with my usual game plan on the last lap, which is just be very, very conservative and not worry about pace at all. All we're interested in doing is keeping the AI behind. Only a couple more corners to go here, but what I'm concerned about is coming out of turn 18. Alonso's got very good pace, not out of the woods yet. Is he going to try and make a move as it widens out here? And he's not going to be able to. And so a very, very close finish there. You can see Nico Rosberg was pushing Alonso hard. And there you have it, able to beat out Kamui Kobayashi, our teammate, who finished in P11, and Grosjean finished 13th. And that was an extremely intense race, about on par with Suzuka, even though that was more a one-on-one duel with Grosjean, and this was more of a combat situation with multiple cars, mostly Alonso at the end there. And maybe the biggest surprise of the race, Heikki Kovalainen in the Caterham finishing in P16. He finished ahead of Felipe Massa in the Ferrari, who again had a terrible qualifying session, and his race obviously didn't go much better. But very, very thankful that that race is over with, and we can now move on to India. And something I didn't include in the capture here, I'll go over it in the next race, the next video. But after this race, I was offered a contract offer from Lotus for the next season, so this whole time I had been wondering what would happen if I beat out Grosjean, and I think this is the 4th or 5th race I beat him. And sure enough, get a contract offer for his seat the next year, and I haven't decided yet. It says that I've got until Sao Paulo, which is the last race on the calendar, to make a decision. But that is almost for sure going to be the decision that I make. Definitely not going to re-sign with Sauber. Want to move my way up as quickly as possible. Want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If in fact you weren't aware, I am doing Grand Prix reviews for the actual Formula 1 season. You can find those on my website, as well as doing a podcast for every race. So feel free to check that out. You can find links for that in the description of this video. And you can find a number of other gameplay videos on my channel, over 250 to be precise. Namely for F1 2011, 12, Grid, Forza 4, and Forza Horizon. And if you haven't checked out my new grid series, seems to be getting pretty good feedback from the subscribers. It's more of a comedy series, so I encourage you to check that out. And until then, I'll be working on India, a track that I'm not overly familiar with, but I do actually like quite a bit. I do enjoy the circuit, as well as the new U.S. circuit coming up in Austin, Texas, Circuit of the Americas. That race is coming up in just a couple of videos or so. So pretty anxious to get to those because they're the newer circuits, and again, ones that I haven't raced on quite as often. So gonna leave you guys here with this epic duel with Alonso. That was definitely very intense, maybe the most intense duel I've ever had on this game series of any year, and that's saying quite a bit. That was a lot of fun. So thanks again for watching, everybody, and I'll see you soon.